Hello, and welcome to the Nutrition and Life podcast. This is where we look at various nutrition and fitness-related topics through the lens of application. We want to give you practical takeaways so that you can create your healthiest, best self backed by knowledge. Now, on to the episode with your host, Coach Lisa.
Hello and welcome to the Nutrition and Life podcast. My name is Lisa, I'm your host, and in today's episode, I want to talk about how to get your micronutrients in through whole foods without supplementation. Before we get into the episode though, welcome to every new listener. If you like this show, please do me a favor, subscribe, rate it, share it on your social media. It is the best way to help me grow. And of course, if you are a returning listener, welcome back. Why do I want to talk about this topic? Well, a few episodes ago, I spoke about supplements and which ones I think are really, really important, which ones can really help optimize someone's performance, someone's life overall, someone's sleep. And I received a lot of questions saying, well, I don't have the financials. What can I do to counter that? I don't want to take so many pills. Can I still have an optimal diet? And the answer is you can still have very, very good nutrition and very much cover most of your bases. I will still say that most people are going to benefit from consuming a few supplements at least, such as omega-3, such as creatine, probably vitamin D, depending on where you live, maybe magnesium. But here are my strategies for how you can cover the majority of your micronutrients through diet alone. I'm going to start with calcium, simply because I believe a lot of women in particular underestimate the importance of consuming calcium, or they overestimate how much calcium they consume actually. So the first strategy here would be to consume a serving, so potentially something like a cup of non-fat Greek yogurt per day. This should cover a large amount of your calcium requirements, even if you are going through menopause or throughout that very important time in your teens as well, where so much of your bone health is determined. So I would most certainly include that into my diet on a daily basis. The second part would be to cover some of your omega-3s, which are so important for as an antioxidant function, just simply healthy fats overall, countering some of the more negative impacts or the stress that we add to our body through training, etc. And that would be by consuming salmon, mackerel, or other kind of fatty fish about 2 to 3 times per week, high quality, it's difficult to say here in terms of quantities. I would say about 4 to 6 ounces. The third part, covering a large amount of iron, vitamin B, some of the zinc, would be to consume red meat, high quality red meat, lean cuts of red meat 2 to 3 times per week. High quality protein source, of course, also, but we're talking about micronutrients here. So in order to avoid having to take an iron or B vitamin supplement or zinc supplement, that is what I would have on a regular basis. So salmon, mackerel, or other kind of fatty fish 2 to 3 times per week, red meat 2 to 3 times per week, and the other protein portions coming from chicken or turkey, as well as an egg every day. So again, with the chicken, we are largely going to cover more of our zinc needs, and eggs, 1 whole egg per day contains a lot of great vitamins, vitamin K, good cholesterol, etc. So those would be the basis of my protein needs, covering a lot of the calcium, zinc, iron, vitamin B, etc., as well as the omega-3s, as I mentioned before. In addition to that, I would add in some bone broth, potentially, or mostly that is more for like collagen, so skin health, hair, nails, but of course also contributing to our joint health. So that is what I would probably implement maybe 2-3 times per week. Of course, if you can consume it daily, a cup of bone broth, that is absolutely amazing. Ideally homemade. You could cook a whole chicken in there and then savoring the bone broth for the rest of the week, just having a little bit of that on a regular basis. Then going further, I would, or moving on to grains, to more the carb sources, I guess I would implement at least one serving of grains per day. So probably a serving of oats, really dependent on your overall caloric needs. But let's just say you might be in a dieting phase or your calorie requirements are on the lower side. I would simply allow for one portion of oats, potentially something like, if you're a smaller female, maybe 40 grams of oats measured raw. That contains fiber, magnesium, and just overall super satiating food. A ton of other micronutrients, vitamin B as well, especially if you cook it well or if you soak it as an overnight oats. Really, really good start to your day. Of course, you can eat oats at different times of the day, but most people eat oats in the morning. This, of course, could also be something like quinoa or brown rice. You can mix that up. It doesn't always have to be oats. The second more carby item on this list here is going to be beans. And this one I might put into brackets because not everybody tolerates beans or legumes that well. However, if you can, a small portion of beans, even if it's just maybe 50 grams cooked or so, is incredibly high in magnesium and copper and vitamin B's as well. So it definitely is beneficial. You could even just have that as like part of a turkey chili, or, it doesn't have to be like super bean based if you don't tolerate it so well. And it might not have to be every single day, but perhaps every second day. And also here playing a little bit with the variety. So one day having chickpeas, another day maybe kidney beans, lentils, etc. They all are incredibly high in micronutrients. On top of that, on a daily basis, I would implement some further starches such as potatoes or sweet potatoes. Once again, it doesn't have to be that huge plate of potatoes that we often associate with, too many carbs. Potatoes are actually incredibly high in potassium and vitamin C, especially if you consume them with their skin on. And most people, or a lot of people, do need to consume more carbs around their workouts, especially if they want to optimize their recovery. They don't need to, but ideally we want to have more carbs around our workouts. So potatoes and sweet potatoes are a great source here. Moving on from that to a little bit lower caloric, but very, very, very high micronutrient dense foods. I would advise implementing 2 portions of greens every single day. So that would ideally be 1 serving of dark leafy greens, for example, kale, spinach, etc., and 1 serving potentially of cruciferous greens. That could be Brussels sprouts, broccoli, and so on. These are very, very high in antioxidants. So again, fighting our free radicals, the free radicals in our body, that come into existence because of the stress that we're exposed to. They are high in vitamin A, vitamin K, and so on. Like, the list here when it comes to the benefits of greens is really long. Additionally, another food item very high in antioxidants, so really helpful for anti-aging purposes, for recovery purposes, is blueberries. Berries in general, blueberries though tend to be on the very top of the list, more or less. And in addition to the blueberries, I would advise maybe 1 further portion of fruit per day. That portion I would probably keep rather varied. So depending on seasonality, depending on what you feel like, depending on what time of the day. For instance, around your training time as a pre-workout, consuming a banana is going to be really great for the potassium effects. It's quickly absorbed and digested. Or instead, if you chose to have some fruit pre-bedtime, you could have some kiwi fruit there. Another really high antioxidant fruit item would be tart cherry juice concentrate. So not the actual juice, which often has a ton of sugar added to it, but tart cherries or tart cherry concentrate has been shown to help with sleep, has been shown to be incredibly high in vitamin C, and therefore also helping our stress management that way. But again, I would keep that second portion here rather varied, just depending on what you're after, really. And then to top that off, so we had our 2 portions of greens, we had the berries, we had one further portion of fruit. I would also add in at least 1 or 2 more colors when it comes to vegetables. And again, here a little bit of variety is probably best. So for instance, some orange for carrots or some bell peppers for extra vitamin C. This could also be another root vegetable. So kind of playing around with whatever is in season once again. And I'm not going to count the next one towards our fruit, but starting your day off with a glass of lemon water with vitamin C in there, obviously, is a really good way to just have, I guess, load up on vitamin C to start your day with, but also for the acidity reason first thing in the morning. You could put in a little bit of ginger in there just to help out further. And on that note, I would also recommend overall cooking with a variety of herbs and spices. So rosemary, for example, or a little bit chili here and there. Other green, fresh leafy herbs like basil or parsley. All of these, even if they just seem like, oh, that's just going to add a little bit of flavor, they actually also have some micronutrients that you are going to benefit from. Now, rounding this off with I guess even further things or more things for your digestive health would be a portion of probiotics in your daily routine. So this could be a glass of kombucha. This could be some kefir, which would be another good addition to your calcium intake. This could be sauerkraut, which would be another good addition to your cruciferous vegetable intake and vegetable intake overall. So some sort of portion of probiotic food on a daily basis is most certainly going to be helpful, even though we're not necessarily talking about gut health here and rather micronutrients. But of course, this is also going to contain some micronutrients. However, I don't want to forget the importance of seeds and nuts when it comes to covering all our bases in micronutrients. So I would also include 1 Brazil nut on a daily basis for selenium mostly. And then on top of that, I would absolutely include a tablespoon of some sort of seeds, for example, in those oats in the morning. That could be flaxseed, that could be psyllium husk, that could be pumpkin seeds. You can mix that, you could match, you could swap from day to day. You're probably going to get really good results from that, or you can just find one that you like and keep that in your oats. And then I would add another portion of nuts. So for example, maybe, again, depending on your caloric requirements at the moment, another portion of nuts, so whatever preference you have, some almonds, some walnuts for brain health, and so on. Maybe about somewhere between 10 to 30 grams is going to be very beneficial. Additionally, probably every day or every second day, trying to have a tablespoon of olive oil overall over the course of the day. It's a really, really great source of monounsaturated fatty acids that's most certainly going to contribute also to your heart health, to just overall well-being. And I know that this is often tricky if people come from more of like, hey, a fear of fat, or people not wanting to quote unquote waste any calories on olive oil. But even just cooking, perhaps, in your lunch a teaspoon, in your dinner a teaspoon, and that's all good. When it comes to performance enhancing things, so I guess in terms of aiding with the lack of not the lack of, but since we're not consuming creatine, so potentially helping your training more, could actually be caffeine. So caffeine is studied very, very well, not as well as creatine, but it is obviously a performance enhancer. So you might as well try to get the very, very best out of your training utilizing the caffeine as long as you train earlier on in the day. And then let's not forget, since you're not consuming any vitamin D, or probably very certainly not enough through your diet, is incredibly difficult to get enough vitamin D through diet, next to impossible actually. So in that case, we really want to make sure we are getting in some outside time in here. So depending on the time of the year, of course, depending on where you live, but just very generally speaking, maybe an hour walking outside, that's probably still not going to cover your needs, especially in wintertime or in even in the transition periods. But it's going to be, you're not going to, it's not going to be detrimental or harmful or hurtful. Let me put it that way. So overall, I will give you a little bit of a summary or what a sample day could look like. But overall, of course, we want to make sure we're covering our protein needs so that we are covering those amino acids and the lack of the creatine supplementation. We also want to make sure we're salting our meals sufficiently, ideally with iodized salt, since we're not supplementing with anything else here. And to help our electrolytes, particularly if you are someone who trains a lot, who's an active individual. I would also really make sure to limit alcohol for the most part, even if people say like, oh, what about red wine? But just any kind of additional toxin exposure, such as through alcohol, or of course limiting the toxins in your environment through plastic, through commercial skincare and cleaning products, all these kind of things, they're just going to contribute or make it harder for your body to not well, your body's going to prioritize getting the toxins out as opposed to just having everything else optimized. So the less toxin exposure we can have, the better, really. And then of course on top of that, really just the recommendation to focus on sleep to help with to help your body recover and for you to be as fresh mentally as possible. And just focusing on overall stress management and still including the right amount and the right kind of exercise. So in summary, I guess your day could look like this. You get up, you have your lemon water with some ginger in there. You have your overnight oats with the Greek yogurt mixed in there, and the tablespoon of flaxseed potentially with your blueberries on top. Then one thing I forgot to mention too, a little bit of dark chocolate here and there is actually a great antioxidant, also has a lot of other valuable micronutrients. So that could be something that you could have with your morning coffee, for instance, or yeah. And then moving on from that morning time to your lunchtime, here I would have the salmon, or other times of the week, maybe the red meat, and adding some sweet potatoes to that, some Brussels sprouts or broccoli, and maybe a little bit of avocado as well, just for some more healthy fats. I haven't mentioned that yet, but it's a great source of fiber and everything else. The beef or the salmon here, I cooked in a teaspoon of olive oil. Then in the afternoon, as I'm getting a little bit snacky, perhaps, and I know my workout is coming up, I will have a banana. I will have potentially in here, you could also add a little bit more of low-fat cottage cheese for the extra calcium. You could also move that to your dinner time. I haven't mentioned that yet, but that's not a must. I think as long as you have like one serving of calcium in the sense of yogurt, that's already great. But we want to have some sort of quick carb source, potentially a little bit of protein, ideally before your workout as well. So that could be a whole egg or some egg whites cooked up in a little egg white muffin. And then going into your training session, after your training, we might want to have another source of grains here, but more importantly, the chicken broth. You could have had that throughout the day as well, or with your meal, maybe with your beans, with some dark leafy greens, like your spinach, and some other vegetables such as potentially carrots, or what else did we mention earlier on? A little bit of sauerkraut for your probiotics as well. And then after dinner, a little while later, you feel like having another small snack. And here you could have the kiwi fruit, as it is supposed to help with sleep as well, or your tart cherry juice to help with your antioxidant intake. And again, if you still have some calories to spare and some protein to go for, then you could have your low-fat cottage cheese here. And I would mix in some of the Brazil nuts and the extra nuts that I still had listed as well. That could be a sample day where you really largely cover a lot of micronutrients, certainly your calcium, your iron, if it's the red meat, or omega-3s if you have the salmon, your vitamin Bs, your fiber intake as well, copper, magnesium, potassium, and so on. I hope you found this helpful. If you have any questions about this, of course, it's going to be, or would be, a lot more difficult if you were plant-based. In that instance, I would say we are not going to get around vitamin B supplementation, and it would be rather challenging to hit your protein intake without any protein powders. But yeah, this is just a sample day for someone who wants to eat a whole foods-based diet with an omnivore approach. If you have any further recommendations or questions for future episodes, don't hesitate to drop them into the comments here, or to contact me on social media as well. I hope you enjoyed the listen and have a wonderful week.
Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, or share the episode on social. Very much appreciated. You can also follow us on Instagram at Nutrition Coaching and Life, or head to our website, www.nutritioncoachingandlife.com, where we provide more valuable content. Have a wonderful day. Now go out and work on your best self.